In August 1914, millions of young men rushed to enlist in the military. They were cheered on by deeply nationalistic crowds and driven by a shared, absolute certainty. They would secure a glorious victory, and the fighting would be over by Christmas. That optimism collapsed almost immediately. The conflict ground into a brutal stalemate, and soldiers were forced to dig in, creating a 1,000-kilometer network of narrow, miserable trenches where they lived knee-deep in freezing, stagnant water. The winter weather exacted a devastating physical toll. Men routinely lost their toes and feet to frostbite and trench foot. Meanwhile, military commanders ordered a series of failed December offensives that accomplished nothing, leaving the corpses of unburied soldiers scattered across the frozen expanse of no man's land. By late December, the Western Front had become a landscape of automated death. Artillery and machine guns turned the earth into an industrialized slaughterhouse designed to break the human spirit. On Christmas Eve, Allied soldiers looking across that frozen wasteland saw something impossible. Tiny, flickering lights appeared on the muddy edges of the German trenches. Then, instead of the crack of rifle fire, they heard the distinct sound of Christmas carols drifting through the freezing mist. What followed was entirely spontaneous. Roughly 100,000 men climbed out of their trenches and walked out into no man's land. They shook hands, shared their rations, and took photographs with the exact men they were ordered to kill. This decentralized mass mutiny of peace remains a historical anomaly. To understand how it organized itself in the middle of a world war and why it failed to hold, we have to look at the exact conditions on the ground. On Christmas Eve, the temperature plummeted, freezing the drowning mud into a solid surface. This provided the first moment of physical relief in weeks, allowing men to move without the crushing weight of the sludge. Look at this map of no man's land. The physical distance between the opposing trenches was incredibly narrow, sometimes a mere 30 yards. This extreme proximity meant soldiers spent months listening to their enemies cough and talk. They realized they were suffering against the exact same environment. In the middle of this shared misery, both governments flooded the front lines with care packages. Princess Mary gift tins containing tobacco, pipes, and festive cards introduced domestic holiday triggers directly into the combat zone. When the Germans began singing Silent Night, the British immediately recognized the melody. Many of those German soldiers had worked in London and Manchester as waiters and butchers before the war, and they began shouting holiday greetings in fluent English. The truce occurred because weather, logistics, and shared demographics collided in a way that could not be repeated. Decades of retelling have focused on the idea of a massive, organized football tournament. In reality, these were informal, chaotic scrambles. Instead, soldiers chased empty tin cans or bundled rags among the shell craters rather than playing a regulated game. A desperate necessity also drove the ceasefire. Both sides had to repair collapsing trenches and bury the unburied bodies of their comrades lying in no man's land. This peace was not universal. In several sectors along the Western Front, unarmed men who climbed out of their trenches to broker a ceasefire were immediately gunned down by the opposing side. There was also fierce internal opposition. Highly nationalistic soldiers viewed empathy for the enemy as a total betrayal of their country. In the Bavarian trenches, one young corporal was disgusted by the fraternization, snapping about their lack of German honor. His name was Adolf Hitler. The reality of the Christmas truce was fragile, heavily localized, and constantly shadowed by the deadly demands of an ongoing war. When the military high command learned about the fraternization, they reacted with horror. To the generals, grassroots empathy was a fatal threat to the rigid mechanics of the war effort. You cannot command a man to kill someone he just shared a cigarette with. Officers deployed immediate countermeasures. They ordered artillery barrages to shatter the silence and threatened strict court-martials to force the infantry back into combat. By Christmas 1915, the conflict had escalated into a much nastier form of warfare. The introduction of chlorine gas and creeping bombardments hardened the hearts of both sides, making a repeat of the truce unthinkable. Further escalations erased the innocence of 1914. Civilians were now targeted via Zeppelin bombing raids, and soldiers were fed into industrialized meat grinders like Verdun, where 750,000 people became casualties in a single battle. The British Army of 1914 was a professional force of career soldiers. By 1915, they had been largely wiped out and replaced by millions of volunteers. These new troops joined specifically to kill Germans, often to avenge friends who had already been lost. The military system successfully re-engineered the conflict, deliberately replacing the shared misery of the trenches with an environment of unfeeling, industrialized hatred. The 1914 Christmas Truce did absolutely nothing to alter the strategic course of World War I. The war dragged on for nearly 4 more years, leaving entire landscapes devastated. Most of the men who walked into no man's land to shake hands were dead within a matter of months. Ultimately, the truce serves as a testament to the immense effort required to sustain human hatred. For one day, the machinery of war failed, and for the rest of the conflict, the world's most powerful empires had to re-engineer the very psychology of their soldiers to ensure such a moment could never happen again.